and certainly a reason for it, Platz. Stand by. Certainly a reason for it was this was, at one time, a plantation. The plantation was called Le Hermitage, and it was set up by French immigrants that came from the island of Saint-Domingue. This is around 1793. And in 1793, the commodity of the world, much like oil is today, was sugar. In the Caribbean, that's what you grew. In fact, all the land in the Caribbean was devoted to growing the sugar. You didn't even have like a vegetable garden. You didn't waste any land on that. You simply imported your food. And all of this cultivation of sugar, the world's commodity, much like cotton will be in the 19th century, was done on the backs of slaves. And in 1793, well, the people on Saint-Domingue, the enslaved, they decided that they don't want to be slaves anymore. And they let the people there on Saint-Domingue know that by kidnapping them, imprisoning them, and cutting off their heads. And the Vincentiaire family, who had a plantation down there on the island of Saint-Domingue, well, they thought maybe it's best we not stay here. So they left. And they come here to Frederick County eventually, and they move here, they build this building, and they kind of want to do it like they did it in Saint-Domingue. So if you'll notice, the first parlor's got some really, really high ceilings. But in the wintertime, well, it gets a little bit frigid, and they found out really quickly that high ceilings weren't a good idea. So they're going to add on to the house, and they're going to turn this into the second largest plantation in, I believe, in Maryland. And the reason that it's the second largest plantation, it's not necessarily the acreage, it's the enslaved that they have. All told, these people owned 92 enslaved Africans, which is very, very odd for this part of Maryland, because cotton, it's not a thing yet. It will become a thing in a little while, in about another 5 minutes, but right now, it's not a thing. Tobacco, you're too far north for tobacco. So we believe that they were renting them out. So this would have been the main house, and in the spirit of defense for what they experienced in Saint-Domingue, they're going to put the overseer in that house right there. Now, the Vincentiaire family will be here for some time, and they are not nice people. There's a Polish fellow who's passing by on this road in the early 19th century who will say that he observes these, I'm paraphrasing, of course, he observes these people who are kind of bickering, instruments of torture, and that they were very, very cruel. They're so cruel that the people of Frederick will notice just how cruel they are. And it kind of makes them a little upset. Now, keep in mind, by the time of the American Revolution, slavery in America is very much a racial institution. This is something that is instilled in you when you are a young person. And what they will say is that this is their divine condition. They will use religion to kind of back this up and what they're doing. And so, even if you were not a slave owner, well, you could at least say that on the scale of the hierarchy, I'm not on the bottom. And the natural condition for these people is enslavement. But they still see them as human beings, because they actually will go to the courthouse and they will file complaints and press charges against the Vincentiaire family, in which they are convicted twice. Now, nothing really happens to them. In fact, it gets so bad that they will actually publish a advertisement in the paper that says, look, stay away from our farms, stay away from our slaves, you come near us, and we'll charge you with trespassing. That's how bad it gets. Now, the Vincentiaires, the two daughters that grow up, they don't want to be in the farming business. They kind of like to party, so they are going to sell off these parcels of land one by one, including the human property, and Eventually, they will move to Frederick. In the 19th century, the Trail family is going to acquire the farm, and they are going to lease it to the Best family. And that brings us back to the battle on July 9th, 1864. Now, the Confederate Army has now arrived in Frederick. Tuts. The Confederate Army has now arrived in Frederick, and they are starting to probe for a way to cross the river. The fighting is actually going to start about 4 miles up the river at a place called Jug Bridge. But when the Confederates realize that those Union defenders are putting up a little bit of any kind of resistance, they're going to break contact, reroute, and come down here. And they're going to march down that road here towards this, well, it's a steel bridge now, but it would have been a cover bridge back then, so I'm depending upon your imagination. And they are going to set up skirmishers on this side of the river. Now, all of this is flat, so Wallace can see everything that the Confederates are doing. But the people in the town, those Confederate sympathizers, remember, we're still in Maryland. This is still a state that retains the institution of slavery. So there are some Confederate sympathizers, and they tell Early, oh, it's just 100-day men, you should be able to punch through them, no problem. And that's what they try to do. But defending on this side is the 10th Vermont Regiment. So when Robert Rhodes, and I'm going to introduce you to another person. His name is Stephen Dotson Ramseur. Now, Stephen Dotson Ramseur is a professional soldier. He is from North Carolina. He's West Point educated, and he previously served in the United States Army for about 5 minutes because he was the class of 1860. But in his service to the Confederate Army, he is going to prove himself time and time again. So he is going to be at the head of this column, and he is going to be given the task. This young, dashing officer from North Carolina with the baby face is going to be tasked with punching a hole in the Union defenses. Now, where is Early? He's not even on the battlefield. He's going to leave this to his subordinates so that they can go ahead and take care of it themselves. And Ramseur's more than capable. Early is inside Frederick negotiating with the town leadership for $200,000 ransom. Now, the people of Frederick, they know Wallace is here. So they're going to have a little bit of a wait-and-see attitude as far as... Right. And we're out. Come here. Sorry about that. Platz. Take a load off. You just did. Okay. So he is going to attempt to break through this line. The Union is going to respond with some pretty good artillery. They don't have much, but what they do have is centered on this farm. From across the river over there, and from a howitzer over on that side where the junction is, where the blockhouse is. That is going to be a howitzer, and that's going to provide infiltrating fire on those advancing Confederates. And pretty soon, they start to figure out that this is not going to be as easy as we thought. No problem. Here's what we'll do. We will just go ahead and flank around. So this is pretty much the situation between 8:30 and 10:30 in the morning. Now, 8:30 in the morning, that's when I get to work, right? So I'm already at my desk. I'm already, sending emails and making plans for the day and doing that kind of stuff. I'm putting out fires and just being real busy, right? Well, the Confederates are going to be real busy here too. But that's not what their intention is. They don't want to be busy. They don't want to fight. So they're going to send John McCausland and his cavalry down the river to try to find a way over there, okay? And McCausland is going to do that. He is going to find a small ford in the river that's going to be adjacent to the Worthington property, which is our next stop number 2 on your maps. And he is going to cross there. Now, all the while that the fighting is going on, the Confederates are still really trying to get through this area on the best farm, because the other side, that's the road to Washington, and they need to use that road. So they are going to continue to engage the Union Army, trying to keep them here so that McCausland can move around, sweep around, and sweep them up. That's a very, very textbook tactical maneuver. Was one of the first things I learned in U.S. Army Infantry School. It's just, you know, contact front, who's going left, who's going right, which way. We go around, sweep them up, and then 2 whistle blasts, you assault through, and it's done.